Recording. Bam. Hey, I've recorded this a few times already, so I know what to say now. I'm gonna go over scales and why they're shaped the way they're shaped, and good ways to think about music versus, well, I guess effective ways to think about music versus more rigid ways of thinking about music that aren't so good for creativity, that kind of tie your brain up in knots, as Schoenberg would say. Now, Schoenberg wrote a book called The Theory of Harmony, and what he starts off in that book doing is talking in philosophy, like pretty dense philosophy, the aesthetics of music and all that. But when he moves on to the practical aspect of music, he starts out with the overtone series, and I'm going to show you why. By building a major scale for you to show you why it exists in the form it does. Okay, so I'm going to play the C note, right? Alright, so in real life, if you got a vibrating column of air that's like, I guess, a flute or like a saxophone, maybe that's the same, or if you have a violin string, or if you have a piano key being hit or a voice singing, you're going to hear one tone above all of the others that exist within it. I'm going to get to that. Because this is the fundamental, it's the lowest tone, and it's the tone that's generating all of these harmonics, which exist within almost every musical tone in the world, which is fucking awesome. But this is like the sumo tone, it's the heavy tone, it's got the weight to it. It's like, it hits your ear, you're like, that's what it is. It's C. But let's move over here and see what exists within the C. All right, what is this tone over here? Is this the same as that C? Let's hear it. Except. Do, do. So we went from do, do. So, all right, let's put that. And let's do it like this, okay? These are colored a certain way for a reason, and I'll get to that later. So now we have two tones, right? Not just one, we've got two. But let's move on a little bit here. What else do we have? There's another tone here, right? Let's hear what that sounds like. Okay, so let's put that. Now we get three tones, and what these happen to be are the basis of all harmony, the basic triad. Now, the reason why I'm going to go over that later. So I'm just going to keep going, keep showing you, all right? Let's go. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the overtone series, this is not 100% accurate. Like, we've sort of discovered that the tones that exist within the overtone series aren't exactly the major scale. They differ slightly, like this right here. You hear that note? It's not exactly an A. It's kind of a B flat, but not really a B flat. But I'm going to put it in as an A. All right, so let's keep going. What else we got here? Oh, over here is a D, and I'm just reading it off the top here, so you can follow along if you want. All right, let's put that in. Let's see what we got so far. All right. Da, 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 da. Okay, so let's keep going. Over here we got this F sharp, right? Now let's just say that sounds an awful lot like this. It's not, it's barely above it. All right. And it sounds like we're missing just one single note to make the 7 notes of the major scale. Oh, where could it be? Over here. This says A sharp, but we're just going to call it a B. All right, so over thousands of years, human beings just kind of figured this stuff out on their own by ear. Right? Let's put that in. Da. All right. So more or less the most important tones do exist directly in the overtone series. So they're actually just like already there. And that's why we have these collections of notes, which is what a scale is, just a collection of notes. That's why they're formed this way. They're formed this way kind of logically. They have their own internal logic to them. And we adjusted the overtone series to fit them into this shape for a lot of different reasons, but each of these degrees in a scale has a function. They're not just arbitrary. And one more thing that I'm going to take an aside here. I started this off by saying, what are some effective ways of thinking about music versus non-effective or like rigid? And a very effective way is thinking in terms of relative instead of absolute. So like when I was starting out, I thought that scales were like, there were like a trillion scales and you had to learn all of the scales or you were a terrible musician. Not true. Totally not true. Totally not true. Scales, like the scale of C major is actually the same exact formula as the scale for C sharp major, the same exact formula as the scale for F major. If you take a piece of music that's in C major and you literally just pitch it up 5 semitones, it will be in F major. Because of the relative nature of the scales, they maintain their forms and their shapes and their functions regardless of what note they start on. So has the same formula as, it's got the same sort of sound to it. And that's the third thing I want to say about effective ways is focus more on how this stuff sounds versus on what it is in like, what it is on paper with paper and pencil, right? So like a good practice to do is to just pencil in a piano roll major scales and pay attention to how they sound. Because it's all about how it sounds, like it sounds a certain way. And if you can do that on every note, right, it's actually really helpful because and what should come next? Like try and hear it in your head. Da, 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 da. Right? If you can do that, if you pencil it in like that and you do it by ear, it'll help you a lot when you're trying to figure out which notes to keep yourself in the limits of if you're trying to make music in a certain scale. And scales are really they're helpful in that way because they put limits on the chromatic scale, which is all 12 notes. And if you're making music with all 12 notes, let me show you. All right, you can, and actually most of the coolest music incorporates chromaticism, which is using notes that are outside of a scale. But it's pretty complicated, like to be able to do chromaticism in a way that doesn't just sound like this. Let me show you. So like, let's start on a C note. All right, so if you're 12 years old and you just downloaded Reason, right, like me, to import Chrono Trigger midis into and pretend like you're a musician to upload to newgrounds.com, you will probably do something like this. So that's dope, right? That's music, but the thing that scales in general really help with is giving you some limits to work within. Because if you use all the chromatic notes, like you can hear this doesn't sound right. But if you were like, okay, instead of using these notes that I chose, I'm going to use the shape of these notes, but in C major, right? And if you're kind of slow on scales, just draw the scale in underneath what you're writing. Right, and you can go, all right, C has a E in it. It doesn't have that D sharp or E flat in it. C has a B in it. I could just repeat the C, maybe. and this A is in C major, this E is in C major, this D is in C major, this G is in C major. All right, and like, let's hear what this sounds like versus the thing that I played before. That actually sounds pretty dope, honestly. And that's why scales are really useful. I'm gonna get more into like stable and active tones in the next video. I don't want these to be too long. And yeah, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, etc. Peace out.